Probably. All right, good evening. Daf Tzadi test tonight in Tzadi test in Maseches Eruvin. The last double-digit daf in the Masechta, Baruch Hashem, tomorrow night daf Kuf. We're going to be learning from the Mishnah on the bottom of Tzadi Ches Amud Beis, about 10 lines or so from the bottom. Just imagine the following circumstance. You're standing in your kitchen. You stick your hand out of the window into Reshus Harabim. Umetaltel Bereshus Harabim. So let's say that the end of my shtender is the threshold, and what I'm carrying is not muktzah. Let's say I'm carrying a mask, and it's out the window. So can I carry something from here, just outside the window? Is that allowed? My mask is hovering over a Reshus Harabim, and I'm in a Reshus Hayachid. So this is reminiscent of that first Mishnah Maseches Shabbos. Remember we said there that whose hand is extended inwards, so it's kind of like a similar ta'am of what's going on there. So let's see what the Mishnah says there. Here too, seemingly there was possibly no hanacha. In this case, well, let's see what the din is. The Mishnah says in this case, and vice versa, Bereshus Harabim u'metalter Bereshus Hayachid. You're standing in the yard, you stick your hand into the kitchen, and you move something from one sink to another, all within reach. So then, ubilvad shelo yotzi chutz me'arba amos. It's mutter. It's mutter to carry in this type of circumstance, provided that you don't move Dalet Amos. So what Dalet Amos means is following the length of the house. It's not like Bas Paro, the magic arm. You're just able to walk. If this is the window, I'm able to walk Dalet Amos going like this. So if in theory I could walk Dalet Amos, that's not allowed. But anything less than that is allowed. Yeah, like a very wide open space. Exactly right. Exactly right. So that's the first din of the Mishnah, and it's without a title, without a name, without a Tana. Lo yamod adam birshus hayachid v'yashtin birshus harabim. A person, however, is not allowed to stand in a reshus hayachid to urinate into a reshus harabim, and also vice versa. Birshus harabim v'yashtin birshus hayachid. That's also not allowed. V'chein lo yirok. A person cannot spit from in one reshus into another. That would also not be acceptable. Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Rabbi Yehuda has a very unique shita. Once a person has designated the spit in their mouth, the saliva to be spit out, then lo yahalich arba amosad sheyirok. It's carrying. Once the saliva that coats our mouth, no problem. But once you're like, all right, I feel azach, I'm going to collect it, then you cannot carry anymore. That's not allowed anymore. Fascinating. So says Rabbi. One of the best reactions to a Mishnah I've heard in a long time, Rob. That's great. So that's the shita. That's the shita of Rabbi Yehuda, that would be considered carrying. Just to take the extreme example of this is that what if it isn't saliva but it's gum in the same volume? So pasha, that's not allowed. You're not allowed to walk with gum in your mouth, and you're not allowed to walk with collected saliva in your mouth. Get ready for some distinctions today between saliva and phlegm. We'll get there. There is a distinction to be made, apparently, in halacha, and we will see that shortly. Let us start with the Gemara on Tzadi Ches Amud Beis, 4 lines from the bottom. Masnila, Rav Chinana bar Shalamya, L'chia bar Rav, Kame de Rav. Rav Chinana bar Shalamya said to Chia, who was the son of Rav, in front of Rav, he said the following din, in contrast with our Mishnah. Lo yamod adam b'reshus hayachid v'talta b'reshus harabim. Now, the case that I described in the Reisha of the Mishnah is where my arm is extended outwards, or vice versa. From Reshus Harabim in is also the same din. You're allowed to be metaltel. Yet Rav Chinana bar Shalamya said in front of Rav that lo yamod adam b'reshus hayachid v'talta b'reshus harabim, which is exactly the opposite of our Mishnah. Last I checked, these are all Amoraim. So what right do you have to argue with our Mishnah? You're an Amora. Amar le, Rav says back to him. It's actually not clear. I think it's actually Chia bar Rav says back to Rav Chinana. Amar le, Shavkas Rabbanan, you've left the sheet of the Rabbanan ve'avadis ki Rav Meir. You've made our Mishnah like the Shita of Rav Meir. If you look in Rashi, 3 lines from the bottom, Rashi says, De'ihu Rav Meir hu de Gazar, Shema Yavi etzlo. Rav Meir, in a later Mishnah that we're going to learn in a couple of blad, he was concerned that you might come to violate an Isser, so therefore he doesn't allow it. But our Mishnah doesn't say that. So Rav Chia bar Rav is pushing back to Rav Chinana bar Shalamya, saying, whose side are you on? Our Mishnah is that of the Rabbanan. You seem to be quoting the sheet of Rav Meir from later. Top of Daf Tzadi Testament Aleph, Husavar, what was Rav Chinana bar Shalamya saying? Husavar, he was thinking, me the Sefer Rav Meir, because on Daf Kuf Aleph, there's a Mishnah like Rav Meir that doesn't allow for carrying from when you're standing in one rishus and your arm is in another. He doesn't allow that. So the sefer of Meir, Reisha Nami Rav Meir, that was the presumption of Rav Chanina Bar Shlamya. So to that, the Gemara says, Lohi, that's not correct. Really, sefer of Meir, the Mishnah on Daf Kuf Aleph is the sheet of Rav Meir, who's more limited. He doesn't allow a person to stand in a Rishus HaYachid and stick his arm out into a Rishus HaRabim and carry, or vice versa. The Bereisha Rabbanan, and our Mishnah is like the Shita of the Rabbanan. Now, our Mishnah then said that when are you allowed to carry in this strange circumstance of standing in one Rishus, arm extended into another? When is that allowed? We said Ubilvad Shalo Yotzi Chutz, as long as you don't move Dalet Amos. So the Gemara is going to make one of two possible inferences, both of which are not mukhrach, and let's see how the Gemara deals with these inferences. Hahotzi, if in fact you were motzi, it says you're not allowed to be motzi dalet amos. But what if you were motzi dalet amos? What if you were at Amma 0, you reach out your window and you pick something up, you pick it up, you walk dalet amos with your arm extended outside the window, and then you put it down. So what did you violate? Is that an Isser Daraisa or an Isser Darabanan? So the first diuk of the Gemara 3 lines down, Tari Testament Al Hotzi Chayav Chatas. That's an Isser Daraisa. You might as well be standing outside, carrying outside. If you're going to be sticking your arm outside and you're going to carry 4 amos, we don't care where your feet are planted. We care what happened. Mechanics. Look, it's like in football. You know, he dives over, but he reaches out with his arm over the end zone, inside the cone, touchdown. So what about here? Same thing. So that's what the Gemara says, is that if you do that, you carried. That's not allowed. So the first diuk is that when the Mishnah says that you're not allowed to carry Dalet Amos, the implication, says the Gemara, is that maybe you should be Chayav Chatas in such a case. And if that's true, Lema Misayeya Leila Rabba. If that's true, then this Mishnah is a beautiful proof for the Shita of Rabba. What is the Shita of Rabba? So Rabba says the following. This is Rava, that if you carry something from one Rishus to another through a Carmelis, then you are Chayiv. Interesting to note, Rashi on the Mishnah highlights this, that there is a Carmelis here. There is some type of space in between, because Rashi on the bottom, if you look at the first Rashi on the Mishnah, 8 or 9 lines from the bottom of the previous page, what does he say? What does he say there? Babayis o al gag. Why does he say that it's on the roof? He has to, because there has to be a makom patur in between. Because otherwise the Gemara doesn't make sense with Rava. Because Rava said, what was the case that's comparable to Rava? Carrying from one Rishus to another with a Carmelis in between. So therefore it had to be that we're on the roof. I'm on the roof, I'm above 10 tfachim, and you're on the ground and I'm carrying something, maybe I'm swinging something, whatever it is. But we needed one Rishus, a second Rishus, and then a third Rishus. Otherwise, it's not comparable to Rava. Either way, the Gemara says that maybe this inference that our Mishnah would say is Chayav Chatas, that supports Rava, because Rava says you're Chayav in that case. So the Gemara retorts, no, that's not correct. You can't say that our Mishnah is a support for Rava. Mika Tani, does our Mishnah say explicitly that Imhotzi Chayav Chatas? It does not say that. Dilma. Perhaps our Mishnah is not saying that carrying Dalet Amos when you're standing in a Rishus HaYachid, but the carrying's happening out the window of a Rishus. Maybe that's not a Nisr D'Oraisa at all. Dilma, Imhotzi Pater Avalasr. Maybe it's only Nisr D'Rabbanan. That's version 1. Version 2, Ika D'Amre, maybe the diuk of the Mishnah was a little different. Ika D'Amre, Hahotzi Pater Avalasr. Maybe we should infer that our Mishnah is really D'Rabbanan. And if that's true, Leima Tehabi Tiyuv to D'Rava. This should have been a kasha in the Shita of Rava, because our Mishnah says that it's only Nisr D'Rabbanan. But that in Rava's case, if you carry from one Rishus to another, Dalet Amos, and you go through a Carmelis, he says you're Chayiv. So our Mishnah with the second inference says you're Pater, and Rava says you're Chayiv. Kasha, says the Gemara, no. Miktani Hotzi Pater Avalasr. You're being too meduyak in the language. We don't know for sure what Rabbi Yehuda Nasi meant in this Mishnah. We don't know what he meant. And Miktani Hotzi Pater Avalasr Dilma Im Hotzi Chayiv Chata. So the Gemara is left inconclusive in regards to how we would compare the Shita of Rava to our Mishnah, whether or not those two things compare. Not clear one way or the other. We said in our Mishnah, Lo Yamod Adam B'Rishus HaYachid. So there, what was in that case? I was talking about being mashtin, when a person would urinate from within a rishus to outside the rishus. Amar Rav Yosei and Hishtain v'Rok Chayav Chatas. If a person, in fact, were to do that, to be mashtin, to urinate from rishus hayachid to rishus harabim, or v'Rok, or if they spit, so then Chayav Chatas. Wow, Isser Daraisa. I asks the Gemara. Let's go back to the ABCs of carrying. We learned this a very long time ago in Maseches Shabbos. The Mara Mekomos here indicated it's around Daf Kuf. So that's been a long, what was it? That was a very big Masechta. So that was 150 something, and we're 100, and that's 150 some odd blot ago. So we know that you can only have a Hakira or a Hanacha from a Makom Dalet al Dalet. But spitting, your tongue is a dalet al dalet. Urinating, that's not dalet al dalet. Come on, that's ridiculous. So the Gemara says, so it says the Gemara, like the Gemara said there, and a very powerful idea, which is transformative in the way we define dalet al dalet, answers the Gemara a third of the way down Tzadi Tesmadav, machshavto mishav yelei makom. Afal pi, that you're right, that in square footage, it's not a place that's dalet al dalet. Inherently, no one would say that that space has the chashivus of an akira or a hanacha. However, you were machshavit, because what were you trying to do? You're standing in the Rishus HaYachid, and you're spitting onto the ground. So now you were machshav your peh to be dalet al dalet. You're machshav to be mashtin. You're machshav the aver to be dalet al dalet, such that you're chayiv midoraisa, which is a very powerful idea. And de'ilote mahachi, if you don't say that machshavto is meshav yelei makom, well, then we don't understand a different din of Rabba. Then we don't understand. Then hada amar Rabba zarak v'nach b'pi kelev or b'pi kivshan chayav chatas. Why there? The mouth of a dog is not dalet al dalet. The mouth of a kivshan is not dalet al dalet. So what happened over there? There too we lacked the requisite dalet al dalet. Ella, what was true over there in the case of the pia kelev and pia kivshan? Ella machshavto meshav yelei makom hachanami here too machshavto meshav yelei makom. Gotcha. Now we understand. So this is a crazy din that if you spit off of a porch, Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRab, you're chayav chatas.
The whole time we've been saying that whenever we're dealing with Shabbos, we're trying to be as legal as possible when it comes to Eruvin. Yeah. And here it seems like it's very extreme.
This is black and white because there's no Eruv to be had. You cannot make an Eruvin in Rishus HaRab. Eruvin can only be made in a Carmelist. This is a pure case of you're in your house and outside is a Rishus HaRabim Doraisa and you spit off your porch. So there we make the jump of machshavto meshav yelei makom dalet al dalet, even though it's true, your peh is not dalet al dalet. But what did you try to do? I tried to move something from here to there, and that's what I wanted to do. It's your chayav. Less than dalet al dalet is a makom Torah or a Carmelist. But it's a rishus d'Rabbanan. This is a rishus d'Oraisa. Why what? That's the dalet al dalet is your peh. That's not a question. That's whether or not it's chashuv enough to have an akira or a hanacha. That's like in the lumdus of akira and hanacha. What is an akira? I have to pick it up from a chashuv space. So if I pick it up from the floor, that's dalet al dalet. I pick it up from something that's not dalet al dalet. You're right. That akira is a zero. But here it was your intention was moving something from here to there. The only way to do it is this way. It's ki'ilu. It's a halachic reality. What's mechudash about it is that it's doraisa. That's a big chiddush. To say that the machshavto meshav makom dalet al dalet, that's a big jump. To make it chiyuv chatas, that's crazy. That's a very powerful idea. We would need to spend time in the Rishonim. How does that work? What's the halachic mechanism to say that your machshava, it's a doraisa machshava? That the fact that this is how spitting works, urination. It's only one method, right? There's no other makom dalet al dalet. That's how it works. So then you're done. Maybe that's part of the mechanics. Is that when the only I'm making this up. I haven't seen this. When the only mechanism is this mechanism, then it's machshavto meshav like a makom dalet al dalet. Could be. The pi kelev, you're feeding the dog. That's how he eats in his mouth. What do you want it to do? Like you're feeding him. You're burning up food. It's in a fire. It's pia kivshan. So it could be. I'm spitballing. It could be that it's true, but there needs to be something there that explains your question, and it's something along these lines of there's a doraisa aspect to our machshava that when the mechanics of the spitting is not makom dalet al dalet, but it's the only way that it happens. So klape that aspect of moving an item from here to there, then it's nechshav k'makom dalet al dalet. I don't have a better answer for you off the cuff, but I have something along those lines. Halfway down, Bai Rabbi, who Rishus HaYachid. A person has to go to the bathroom. They're standing in Rishus HaYachid, but they're standing mamish at the threshold of the Rishus HaRabim. Upi ama Rishus HaRabim, but his aver is outside Rishus HaRabim. So how does this work? Mahu basar akira azlina no basar yitzia azlina. Do we follow the bladder that's on this side of the threshold? Do we follow the yitzia of the urine at the end of the aver, which is rishus harabim? Where's the line? How do we define? How do we do this? Teku. Tishbi atar skushos abayas. We don't know the answer to that question. Halfway down. Torahi v'lilmod anu tzrichin. Only if it's Dalet Amos, yeah.
But he's not, no, we established that urination doesn't need Dalet Amos.
Nope. This Dalet al Dalet is not Dalet Amos. The Dalet al Dalet is a Dalet al Dalet Tfachim, that the Makom is a Makom Chashem. But the Isser Doraisa of Rishus Harabim is moving Dalet Amos. You still need that Akir B'Anacha rule, Akir B'Anacha of Dalet Tfachim al Dalet Tfachim. You still need that. But we said Machshavta Mashav like Makom Dalet al Dalet. But in that case, the urination would have to be Dalet Amos. And then you'd be Chai B'Chatas.
If you consider standing in the middle, I still have to be Dalet Amos.
Wherever you are, the movement has to be Dalet Amos. So if someone would, if you could urinate Dalet Amos, you'd be Chai B'Chatas. That's correct. But the Dalet al Dalet is Tfachim about the Akira space and the Hanacha space. So that's not simple. That's not simple. V'chein lo yirok, we said in our Mishnah, a person is not allowed to spit on from one rishus to another. And then we saw the unique extreme sheet of Rabbi Huda Omer v'chule. What did he say there? We said that even if it was nishtalish, even if the spit was separated in the mouth, it became the spit in your mouth that you're ready to spit out, then already ledugma. On Yom Kippur, I have to swallow medication. So you collect saliva in your mouth to swallow. What are you going to do? That would be the case where you're not allowed to walk Dalet Amos for Rishus Harabim on Shabbos. That's not allowed. So says the Gemara, this strong, unique sheet of Rabbi Yehuda, let's analyze. What if you don't move it around in your mouth? There should be a svara that moving it around in your mouth is an afkamina. Of course, we have a Mishnah that discusses this explicitly. How so? We've spoken about this many times in Maseches Shabbos and here as well about being machshir tuma for food. How are we machshir tuma? Or yad shachatam, one of the 7 liquids. Now, saliva is mostly water, but it's not water until it leaves your body. Okay. Now, it says the Gemara as follows, but it's not. Your hands are tummy, and you're eating a food in your mouth which is not tummy. You found a little seed in your mouth. You reached into your mouth with your tummy hands. The food was not tummy, the food was tahor. You stuck your hands in your mouth, saliva touches your hands, instantly becomes one of the machshirei tuma liquids. Now it's mayin, because it's on your fingers. And you were just matame the food in your mouth, potentially. Rameir Natame, he says you were just matame the food in your mouth because it never left your mouth. But now that it's on your fingers, now it's mayin. Now it's not saliva anymore. Now it's not rok. Now it's mayin. Rabbi Yossi Mitahir, he says no big deal. What does Rabbi Yehuda say? Rabbi Yehuda Omer, hi pechba tame lo hi pechba tahor. If you move it around in your mouth, so then the saliva changes from the din of saliva to mayin. Now it's a machshir for tuma. And if you don't move it around in your mouth, then it doesn't become a machshir latuma, and the food in your mouth is tahor. Aye, but this is Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah doesn't make the distinction of hafach ba v'lo hafach ba. Nothing. So which Rabbi Yehuda is it? The Gemara says stira. Amar Rav Yochanan, 2 answers. Amar Rav Yochanan, muchlefes hashita. The most basic understanding of muchlefes hashita is that the shitas were messed up, and you needed to switch one of them. However, Rashi here changes that. Rashi here says that he changed his own sheet. Take a look at Rashi. Rashi halfway down on the page. Dibur Hamas Muchlefes Hashita Hechlef Rabbi Yehuda Shitaso V'Yasa Himena. He changed his own mind to go back to our Mishnah to say that the distinction of Hipechba below Hipechba does not apply, and really just the entrance of one's hands into their mouth would generate tumor. Okay, what's the second way to get out of this problem? Rish Lakish Omer La'olam Lo Tachlif. Really, Rabbi Yehuda never backtracked from his shita, and the distinction of hipechba below hipechba is still applicable. And only would the saliva become mayim as it relates to being machshir tumas ochlim. The only way that would happen is if something entered your mouth that was tamei. We were not talking about regular saliva, talking about phlegm. Okay. Tanya, wait a minute. Rabbi Yehuda Omer kicho v'nitlash. It seems to be that kicho v'nitlash seems to be talking about rok. So are we talking about rok, What my love, rok v'nitlash doesn't seem like v'nitlash seems to be talking. That was our Mishnah. Our Mishnah used the language of v'nitlash as it relates to rok. So is the word v'nitlash a rok word? Is that a saliva word or is that a phlegm word? Says Gemara, my love, rok v'nitlash. Lo, look at the words. Kicho v'nitlash is talking about phlegm only, not saliva. Iva Tanya Rabbi Yehuda Omer explicitly. Kicho shenitlash, viroko shenitlash, talking about both. So you can't have it both ways. Lo yahalach dal ramasashi yirok. It can't be that way. Ella machvarta kidushanin and meikar. We reject this second answer of Reish Lakish that is talking about kicho, and we fall back to the previous answer of who was it of Rabbi Yochanan that muchlefes hashita. The Rabbi Yehuda backtracked his answer. Last Gemara, the shortest piece of hashkafa for the day, a very short Akarata. Amar Reish Lakish. Let's not take light of it. It's Eruvin. Says the Gemara. Amar Reish Lakish. Kiech bifnei Rabba. If someone were to spit out phlegm before their Rebbe, chayv misa. Shene'emar, as the pasuk says, kol misanai ahavu maves. Al tikri misanai elo lemasni I. Those who make me hate them, I, says the Gemara, v'hamenas anis. Sometimes you can't control it. Rashi points out maybe you have a cold, maybe you're sick. Rashi says just to the right, 1.5 inches, 2 inches up. V'hamenas anis shal korchohu al yedei choli o hatzina. You've got a cold. What can you do? Post nasal drip. It happens sometimes. Says the Gemara, kiech v'rok karmin. We're talking about someone who could have controlled the difference. Take a look at the last Rashi before the Mishnah. Rashi above us, an inch or two as well. Dibra maschil kiech v'rok karmin and sherakak also bifnei rabba v'hayalo liistalik misham o lahavlio b'tsuso. Take a tissue, collect it in your mouth like a mensch, and put it away. What are you spitting on the ground for? No, it was mamish bebegadim. They would just kind of wrap it up. They would have like a scarf, whatever. Yeah, they had handkerchief. They press it in. Yeah. They also had spittoons, so things were a little bit different in that culture as well. It's a chutzpah, and something's wrong with that. Right, that's it. So the minig of spitting on the ground during Elena. What happens if with this Gemara if it's lifnei Rabcha? So that's what. Oh, I don't know. I'm not, yeah, I've seen the minig before. I've seen it before. I've seen it happen in Schultz before, but it's clearly not triggering this issue from their perspective. What? That's a fair point. Should be a COVID restriction. Yes. Baruch Hashem. Next Mishnah, 8 lines, 9 lines from the bottom. Sadi Testament Aleph. Let's continue. Next Mishnah, Lo Ya'amod Adam b'Rishus Hayachid v'Yishta b'Rishus Harabim. So if I'm in my house, I should not lean over the threshold into the Rishus Harabim to take a drink, unless, or B'Rishus Harabim v'Yishta b'Rishus Hayachid, or vice versa, in either direction. Elim Kein Hichlis Rosha B'Rubo L'Makom Shushosa v'Chein B'Gas. That would be true until Rosha B'Rubo, until your head and most of your body is in that new space, whichever one it is, and then you're allowed to drink. No problem. We saw this by Pasei Rose many blot ago. Then Rosh Baruba, you have to have most of your body. We're discussing animals there, I believe. But either way, that would be the dinner. V'chein v'gas, and same with a wine press. That's going to be a very important 2 words, as we will see shortly in the Gemara. Says the Gemara, do you want to say the same thing we said as we started earlier today? Reisha Rabbanan v'sefer Reb Meir. Do you want to say that this Mishnah is like the Rabbanan? And the Mishnah Daf Kuf Aleph is like Reb Meir again. Says the Gemara, no, here everyone agrees. Amar Rav Yosef b'chafetz and tzrichin lo v'divrei hakol. We're talking about these types of utensils that people would use that were concerned about anyone transferring reshuyos. That would be problematic. Rashi, the first of the longest lines, Rashi b'dibur hamaschel b'chafetz natzrichano afilu rabbanon modu. Even the rabbis would agree to Reb Meir's more strict line, to gazrinan behu, to mitochshu tzarich lahem, because he needs these utensils. Yachnise metzlo. We're afraid that he'll transfer reshuyos. Hilkach mashkin halalu tzrichano v'gazrinan. And therefore, we have the same zera. So this Mishnah, we would not differentiate between Rav Meir and the Rabbanan. This Mishnah is L'chol Hadeos. The previous Mishnah is only the Rabbanan. The Mishnah on Kuf Aleph is going to be Rav Meir, but this Mishnah is L'chol Hadeos. In other words, where do we have Gzeros de Rabbanan? We said there was no Gzeros de Rabbanan in the previous Mishnah of carrying outside the window, as long as it's less than Da'anam, with no rabbinic injunction there, according to the Rabbanan. Rav Meir would argue. But in this Mishnah, because of the nature of the person, we have a kli here that we're afraid you're going to bring in, so then we don't allow that. Says the Gemara, 3 lines from the bottom, Carmelis Mai. Carmelis Mai. We've been discussing Rishus HaRabim to Rishus HaYachid. What if you're going from a Rishus HaYachid into a Carmelis? We're drinking water. So same Shilam, over the threshold, can I drink water from a Carmelis? Machlokas Amoraim. Abaye, Amar Abaye, he. Same exact din. We don't make any distinctions. Famous line of Rava. This probably is in Shas 30, 40 times. I'm just guessing the number. Amar Rava, he gufa gzeira. Carmelis itself is Xera Derabanan. The Anna Nekum Vinigzor Xera Lexera, and on top of a Carmelis, which is a Din Derabanan, you're going to add another Chumrah that you have to be Rosh of Arubo in that space in order to drink water. That's Xera Lexera. So says Abaye, slow down. Amar Abaye, Mina Minala. Do you know what my Mar Makom is? It's my Mishnah, this Mishnah. Idikatani V'chein Begas. Says Rashi, this is talking about a Carmelis. The Gas is a Carmelis. So that's our Mishnah. I'm not, don't look at me. If you have a question about Gzera L'Gzera, ask Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. This is not on me. The Mishnah says V'chein Begas, and that's a Carmelis. So what would Rava say about that? If Abaye's Mari Makum is our own Mishnah, then it's true. Rava can't ask on Abaye. Then Rava has to ask on the Mishnah. But Rava Amar, no. When it said the Inyan Gas in our Mishnah, that was the Inyan Meiser. We've seen this answer previously somewhere. I don't rings a bell somewhere. I don't remember where we saw it. V'chein Amar Rav Sheshes, V'chein Begas, the Inyan Meiser. That wasn't talking about this issue of carrying. It was only talking about drinking in another rishus. It wasn't talking about Carmelis. So Machlokas Abaye v'Rava in regards to Carmelis, because we don't know what the words V'chein Legas were intended for in our Mishnah. Abaye said they were intended to teach us about a Carmelis, and Rava said it was only intended to teach us about an Inyan Meiser. Ditznan. How do we know, says Rava, that we're talking about Meiser here? Says the Gemara, Ditznan. Shosin al Hagas. One is allowed to drink in the wine press. We know, of course, that one is allowed to drink prior to Hafrasha. When it is an achilas arai, when it is only a little bit, sometimes this is Geneva, what I'm about to say. Sometimes people go to Jewel, they grab a grape and they eat one to see if that's Geneva Daraisa. That's Pasha stealing. You're not allowed to do that because you pay by weight. Unless there's a sign that's matir, you're not allowed to do that. But when it comes to the Maisha that we allow, you're allowed to eat before all the tithes are completed because it's achilas arai. So here we say, if you're shosin al hagas, that's fine. The Tanakama writes, bein bechamin uvein betzonin, whether the liquid is hot or cold upater, you don't have to give meiser there. David Reb Meir. Rabbi Eliezer ben Sadok Mechai. Rabbi Eliezer ben Sadok says, I'm sorry, that's already a keva. Why is that a keva? So it says Rashi, the line 6 of Rashi, Dibur Hamaskal Mechai, Dimiziga Shemozgo b'mayim mishavi lekeva. Because when you take wine out and you add water to dilute, that drinking style is a style of keva. It's too much. You're not drinking raw wine. It was too strong to drink. So he felt that if you took out the water and diluted it, that's not an achilas arai anymore. You've made this into a real l'chaim, and it's a keva now, and that's not allowed. And then the split shita is the last one. The chachamim omrim alachamin chayev. If it's very warm, so then you're not allowed to drink it. That would be usher. You'd have to take off all the maestros first. No achilas arai here. The alatzonin pater. Why? Mibnei shemachzer esamosar. Because if it's cold, you can put it back in, but if it's hot, adding in something hot would ruin, I guess, the fermentation process. It would ruin something. Rashi highlights alacham and chayiv, that Rashi Dibur Masel to our left, an inch and a half up. De'in roi lachzor hamosar shemekalkel hayayin. When you're returning hot wine back in, it ruins it. So these are the distinctions that Rava makes to prove that by a gas, that by the wine press, that we have dinim of meiser. You got to be careful. V'chein v'gas. We have to treat it that way. So machlokas Abaye v'Rava.
Person taking the grape out of his bag, that per pound, whatever fruit, you see it happening. Is it your responsibility to tell them, shoot him, ask him?
Shoot him?
No, I mean,
so if you see someone doing any avera, we have a mitzvah d'oraisa, but you also have to know your crowd. You have to know if it's going to be received on good ears or on deaf ears. If you have a sense that a person's not going to listen, so then the mitzvah dissolves. There is no mitzvah in that case. If I was walking through the store with one of my kids and they grabbed a grape, you're not allowed to do that. That's totally us. And the way you'd compensate is to grab another grape, pay for it, put the grape back. You have to find a way to be. They wouldn't care if you asked them for rishus to be mevatel. They'd say no problem. They don't care. You have to ask the right person. You can't ask a cashier. They have no skin in the game. You have to ask a manager and find out these are real shilas. This unrelated. Today I ordered something. We were doing a little project in our house. I ordered hinges for something and they sent me 2. So what's the din? You have to return it. So these are like similar types of shilas. But if you to take a grape in a store, if you can get away with saying it in a way where you think they're actually going to listen to you, so then you may have a mitzvah d'oraisa to do so. Ask a shilah before you perform any such activities. There should be that caveat on the bottom of like this recorded screen, like please Ask your local Orthodox rabbi. Next Mishnah, 2 more Mishnahs for the night. We're going to get to the last Mishnah before the night ends. We got to get moving. Okay, says the next Mishnah. Koleit adam min hamazchila lemata miyutfachim uminat tzinor mikol makom shose. Let's say that there is a gutter and you want to drink some water. You want to collect some water. The water is clean coming down from the heavens, hopefully. And what you do is you take a bucket and you put it under, you project where the water is going to fall. You take a bucket, you're under 10 tfachim, you put it under the spout, and you're allowed to collect, no problem. However, but what you're not allowed to do is put the bucket up to the gutter. You could reach it. That you're not allowed to do because the roof is a reshus hayachid, and down here is a reshus harabim, and now you're just literally taking one from the next. So that's not allowed. Umin hatzinor, which Rashi points out, we're talking about here about a makom tour. It's a pipe that's kind of like out in the fields, kind of a thing. So from there, mikol makom shosa, there you can even put the kli all the way up to the spout and drink the water from there. Koletim, we see from here, from the word kolet, the very first word of our Mishnah, the fact that you are allowed to collect from a distance, but that you're not allowed to put the pitcher up against the gutter at the top of the roof. Aval mitzare flow, that you're not allowed to do. You can't be touching the gutter to collect. My taima. Amar Rav Nachman, hacha b'mazchila pachos migimel samach legagos kinan. We're dealing with a pipe, with a gutter that's within 3 tfachim of the roof of our roof, which is how our houses are made, right? There may be other structures, but if there's a roof and you have a gutter that's right there, then you're not allowed to put a pitcher on top of the roof, right up against the spout, because it's too close to the roof. So if the gutter is within 3 of the roof, then that's a problem. And Rashi explains this out explicitly, that our concern here is that we're afraid that you will be taking from the roof for Reshus HaYachid down below as a Reshus Harabim, which is Aser. Tanya Nami Hachi, we'll see a couple of brises that support this, and this will almost bring us to the next Mishnah. Tanya Nami Hachi, what does the brisa say? Omed Adam Birshus Hayachid, Umagbia Yado Lamala Me'asar Tvachim Lepachos Mishlosha Samach Legag V'Kolei. You can reach up as high as you want. If you're within 3 Tvachim of the roof, you have to make sure that you keep a distance with your pitcher. It can't be up against the actual gutter, because that will be usher. That's an isser. I don't know what the level is. It's usher to do that. Ubilvad shelo yitzaref. You just have to make sure that your pitcher is not actually touching the gutter. Tanya idach, another brisa. Lo yamod adam b'reshus hayachid v'yagbia yado lemala me'asar tzvachim lepachos migimel samach legag v'yitzaref. He says this in the other way. You're not allowed to reach up there to be mitzaref. You're not allowed to bring the pitcher up to being in contact. Aval kole tu b'shoseh. So they're just said in reverse ways. The first one is said you are allowed to go up to 3 tvachim as long as the pitcher is not touching. The second brisa says you aren't allowed to put a kli up to the gutter while it is touching, but you are allowed to have it not be touching. Same guideline. As long as the gutter is within 3 tvachim, you are allowed to collect water as long as the pitcher is not in direct contact with the gutter. At the 2 dots, 1/3 of the way down, min hatzin or mikol makom shoseh. We said that with this pipe that's in a makom ptur, you are allowed to put your pitcher directly up to the spout, and it can touch in by the tzin, just not by our roofs. Tana, imiesh b'tzin or dalat al dalat. If the width of the pipe is in fact 4 wide, then aser mibneshu kimotzi me reshus the reshus. Then that's its own reshus. Fine, that's not. Then it's a karmelis or whatever the reshus is, but then that's not allowed. Next Mishnah, almost halfway down, Daf Tzadi Testament base. Bor b'reshus harabim l'chul yaso gva yot tvachim. We have a pit in the ground, and we have a rim above the pit, which is 10 tfachim tall. And chalon she'al gabav, and you have a window, the apartment of your window is right above that space. So then the din is, memalan heimenu b'Shabbos, you're allowed to draw water directly from that water pit. Remember, above ground is a 10 tefach rim around the pit, okay? So 10 tefach is 40 inches. Now we're above, that 40 inches takes us into the makom p'tur space because it's tall. And you live in an apartment, you are allowed to reach over in the air outside and reach down into the bore and pull up water. Similarly, ashba, if you have a garbage pit, birshus harabim, gvo yotzvachim, if you have a garbage pit in a reshus harabim that's 10 tefach tall, and chalon she'al gabav, and your window's right there, you can pour garbage there. Shofchen l'sochel mayim b'Shabbos. Obviously, the question is, why is all of this allowed? Says the Gemara, b'maya skinan, what are you talking about? Why is this allowed? Says the Gemara, ilema bismucha, if it's mamish, very close to me, it's right next to my house, within Gimel Tvachim, it's so close, lamalichul yud. Then why did the Mishnah have to specify that we were talking about a case where the rim that was above the pit was actually 10 tefach tall. Even if it's less, it should be mutter because it's lavud. It's so close. No, this is in fact far away. It's far enough from you that there's no dalit, that there's no lavud. The reason why it's mutter is because there's a chulya asara. And haleka chulya asara, kamitalta merishus hayachid, l'rishus hayachid derech rishus harabim. Now, if I'm reaching out of my window and the rim is above 10 tefachim, my hand is going through a makom p'tur, because that's above 10 tefachim. Let's say I'm at 13 tefachim. So I have my bucket. I'm reaching out in a makom p'tur at 13 tefachim. I drop it into the chulya, which is above 10 tefachim. I draw up water and bring it back out. What have I done? Nothing. It's mutter, because I went from a rishus hayachid through a makom p'tur into a bore and I extracted back. But if it's not 10 tefach tall, then I've gone through a rishus hayachid to a rishus harabim because it's not 10 tefach tall, then into the pit. That's us, or that's not allowed. So that's why the Gemara says we're dealing with a case where it has to be 10 tefach tall. That's the saving grace, because now we're above 10 tefachim, and that means we have not gone through a rishus harabim. It says the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan, he gives another answer. For Rabbi Yochanan Amar, afilu tema, even if you want to say the smucha, it is close, hakamash malan, debor v'chul yasum, mitzarfen lasar. He gives a mathematical answer. What is the 10? It's mitzaref to be 10. The chulya is 7 and the bore is 3, and some iteration of that. But it's in fact not 10 tefach above the ground. It's just that in combination, it's 10 tefach total. But in that case, it has to be smucha. So just two ways to approach this problem. Last sugya for the night. We learned about this a long time ago. The Gemara is going to quote this now. What happens if one of the walls that you're relying on for your mavui is made of garbage? So it says the Gemara, we said in our Mishnah, Ashba Bershus Harabim, we allow someone to pour their garbage into an ashba that's in a rishus harabim. Why? Says the Gemara, what about the concern that some of the garbage will blow away, will fall away? It's only 10 tefach. That's not so much. You got a good gust of wind. We had 50-mile-an-hour winds yesterday. Easily could have knocked things over. Says the Gemara, he says, I know from my Rabbeim this is problematic. Maisa b'mavui echad shetzido echad kala liyam. We learned this a while back. Where was this? Just for memory's sake, on Daf Ayin Ches in this Masechta and Tzadi Tes in the previous Masechta, Masechta Shabbos. So at one end, the mavui ended at the water. Tzido echad kala la'ashba, and on the other end, the mavui ended with a garbage heap. Uva maisa lifnei Rabbi, and they brought the story to Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. V'lo amar bo lo iser v'lo heter. He wouldn't paskin for them. Heter lo amar bo. Why did he give them a heter? Because, and this is our problem, tichayshinan shematinot al ashba. We were concerned that some of the garbage might wash away. The yale hayam sirton, some of the dirt's going to come up, and now what used to be a wall of garbage is now just regular karka. That's the language of Rashi here on the bottom. Whereas he is, I didn't mark it off. Where's the Rashi? It's 4 lines from the bottom and the end at the beginning of the line. There will be dirt that comes up from the water; it'll dry out. V'nasa karka olam. So your garbage, with enough water, was not going to be garbage anymore. It's going to be karka, and it just may be a small little mound on the ground and not yud tvachim anymore. So we see from our Gemara that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was concerned about the making smaller of the pile of the garbage. Let me find my spot here. Heter lo amar, because the chayshin and shematinat al ashba v'yala yam sirton. Iser lo amar, he wouldn't say that there was anything usher because amar bo da hakayam and mechitzos. We have walls, so we see a stira. We see that our Mishnah seems to not be concerned about the lessening of the size of the pile of the garbage in the Rishus Harabim. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi himself, who was the compiler and editor of the Mishnayos, was concerned about it in another frame. And we actually know that a Maisa is a very powerful Maisa. So you can't just reject it. So the Gemara says, Lo kasha, hadiyachid hadirabim, it depends. In the latter case, in the case that we quoted from the 2 previous Mari Makomos, that was talking about a yachid. Our Mishnah is talking about a rabbin, is talking about for the masses, and that is the distinction between the Mari Makomos and our Mishnah stands. We'll stop here. Here's Hashem. We'll pick up tomorrow night with Daf Kuf, and Baruch Hashem, getting closer. Our last Monday night of Daf Yomi for this Masechta. Looking forward to continuing learning together.